In this video, I'm driving a mini Italian job, one of several cars you could drive as part of the Drive Dad's Car experience. Well, I must say, my dad never had a Mini. I always wanted a Mini when I was a kid, and it never quite happened, not until I was much older. Let's take a look around this car and discuss what links it to that car over there. No, not my Inva car, the little Austin 7. So what links these cars, aside from being baby Austins, is that when this car was launched in 1959, it was initially sold as the Austin 7 or the Morris Mini Minor. Both brands were then part of the British Motor Corporation, but really Austin, the developer of the original 7, had the upper hand in that relationship. Launched in 1959 to much fanfare, people quickly discovered just what an absolute hoot these cars are to drive. They were the idea of Sir Alec Izagonis, who was the engineer at the British Motor Corporation, having started at Morris, where he developed the famous Minor. So he's quite good at icons, it turns out, Izagonis, but he's not very good at following a design brief. The Mini was meant to use the A-series engine that already existed and which was used in the Austin A35. Now, he sort of did use the A-series. This is an A-series engine. There it is, all iron, very robust engine, very good torque characteristics. But he got a bit carried away and developed the in-sump gearbox. The clutch mechanism is in here, taking drive through the clutch down to the gearbox, which is in the sump of the engine. And that necessitated a vast overhaul of the engine, so it ended up not being an off-the-shelf engine at all. So far, so very Izagonis. It's got a side-mounted radiator that would be used in other Izagonis classics, and this later addition that came into production, the seal to protect the distributor, which is behind here, because otherwise water just comes in through the grille, soaks the distributor, and you find yourself not going anywhere. This has got a few later mod cons, including a brake servo that just about gets in the way of the bonnet stay. Look at that for a bit of design, marvellous. But otherwise, very, very similar to the original concept. This is actually the 1275cc engine, which was used on the Cooper models, which also had bonnet stripes. But this is an Italian job. I think it was to commemorate the anniversary of the film. This is about in 1992, so we get some funky graphics, we get the funky wheels, the Italian job, and they were available in red, white and blue. Being a later Mini from the 90s, we've got these larger rear lamps. These actually came in the 70s, I think, late 70s, with a reverse light. Oh my gosh, the luxury. But otherwise, yeah, not an awful lot of change. We've still got the rubber cone suspension. Some Minis for a time used wet suspension, a hydroelastic system, but that proved problematic, so the Minis reverted to simple rubber cones. And this comes from a time when the Mini was experiencing a renaissance. During the 70s, it had been largely just forgotten about and ignored, and the Metro developed to sort of replace it, but it never quite did, because the Mini was just, well, it's a Mini, look at it, it's cute. It handles like nothing else. They are extraordinary cars to drive. And so they actually had a renaissance, great marketing, great special editions. The Mini found favour again, with production finally ending in the year 2000. So this represents towards the end of production, and there are a few issues with these later ones. They're awfully good at doing this, for instance. But if you're going to let Joe Public come and drive your cars, maybe you don't want to have an absolutely pristine example, because this is going to get used in all weathers. So yeah, drivedadscar.com, you can come and do this. Let's go for a drive. First of all, let's check out the interior, the doors. That's a very typical Mini noise. And you sort of jump in, you squeeze a board, and it's not actually too much of a squeeze at all. The driving position is quite good. Yes, there is wheel arch intrusion, but small pedals mean the pedals aren't actually too offset from the driver. We've got 4-speed gearbox. Mini's never had a 5-speed from the factory. Jack Knight did offer a 5-speed upgrade. Yeah, we've got controls that are absolutely ancient by the standards of the 80s. Ignore this is all the recording equipment, because you can record your experiences driving these cars. So So we've got a simple heater. It's got a single speed and it's quite loud. Quite amused that that's working without the ignition on. Maybe I got the accessory position. There we go. And we've got a choke control here, and look at this. It stays out. Nearly always you have to use a clothes peg to keep your Mini's choke cable out, so that's very, very impressive. Heater control is here. You pull out for hot, you push in for cold, and then you got various switches here as well. I'll just pop the ignition back on. The job of this switch is to test that bulb, and if that light comes on when you're driving along, it means your brake fluid's too low. Heated rear window, fog light, hazard lights, proper hazard light noise, light switch, side light, and full headlights. And then we move to the column stalks, which are exactly what you'd find in a Metro of this era. So the stalk there with a horn, a nice little horn. Wiper control this side, give it a squirt. Apparently we haven't got any screen wash. Oh well, that's what the wiping pattern does. It's good overlap, no triangle of doom. Always good wiping performances. Being a sporty little number, we've got a Rev Counter as well as a tiny little speedo, and it looks like some slightly off colour sporty background. We've got the fresh air ventilation as well, which was fitted to Mayfairs. I think the cities may have finally gathered those or garnered those at some point. That's the door release, winding windows, and the door lock is situated here. Bonnet release as well. Nice free spoke steering wheel, again with the Italian flag for the Italian job vibes. Funky little sporty seats, and surprisingly comfortable. These ones actually have a tilt mechanism. You didn't get that on cities, I don't think. Well, you might have done by this time, but you certainly didn't in the early 80s. So yeah, it feels really, really good. You're going to want me to get in the back, aren't you? Here we go. Open the door, we pull this knob, and the seat should tip in theory. There we go. Oh, how am I meant to get through that? Yeah, I think I'm going to give up at this point, because the head restraints impact the roof and stop the seats tilting, so you can't easily get in the back. I have sat in the back of a Mini, and it is actually possible, and it's not actually too uncomfortable, bar the fact you've got the rubber cone suspension bouncing you around. We'll go and have a quick nose in the boot. Just turn the ignition off before I cook the coil. See if the boot's open. There we go. Got the car's cover in here. The battery is stowed away under there. Should have its cover on really. And then you've got the fuel tank. On earlier Minis, you had a drop-down number plate, so you could load this lid up and use it for a bit of extra carrying capacity. There's also a trick used on London taxis. Okay, let's have our own little mini adventure. Start the engine. Might need a bit of choke. Actually, it's a bit cold. I'm going to put my seatbelt on because that's always a good idea, even when you're driving on private ground. That's one key difference from the Austin 7, which didn't even have seatbelts. And we should go for a drive. Very short clutch travel. Feed this wheel, which sits at such an extraordinary angle, it feels quite weird in the hands. And 1.3, so it should be quite perky, and is, because there's so little weight. But yeah, the ride is a little bouncy. It always was. There's not a lot of suspension travel here, and I think given that limitation, it's amazing how comfortable the ride actually is. Make sure there's no one coming in. But then of course you can just chuck it round bends, and they just corner so flat that they really do drive like no other car I've ever driven. Even sporty hot hatches have much more body roll than the Mini manages. I'm going to go and take a drive through the car park now, and we'll go and tackle a slalom, because if Minis were built to do anything, it's that. I mean, I love watching them in historic racing. The Minis struggle a bit at Goodwood because they just don't have the raw power, but on a twisty circuit they will leave the American cars for dead. For all their 7-litre V8 engines, they can't catch a Mini because they just corner so well. There we go, you can tackle the slalom. Really quick steering. It's just great. Oh, I don't think any other car is better at this. There's just no body roll. Whee! They are so much fun. You can just, I used to do it on the road. You can just leave people for dead. You get tailgated. I used to drive a 1 litre Mini and I get tailgated on the flat bits. Get to a bend and suddenly where have they gone? They just can't keep up with you. Oh yeah, that's a proper rorty little thing. Oh, there's the museum owner Richard in the Austin 7. They're just preparing that car for the NEC. I think he's just checking it runs well. But yeah, these are just astonishing cars. And it's sad, but we had a generation where almost everyone would have been in a Mini, maybe learnt to drive in a Mini, had one as their first car. And of course we don't get that anymore, because these are cars that are so different to anything else that was on the market at the time. You think it's a world of the Citroen AX and the last of the Rover Metros when this car was made. It was just so different, and so different to other people's cars like the Volkswagen Beetle and the Citroen 2CV, the Fiat 500, all cars with massive character and also very different. But yeah, maybe the Mini was more fun than any of them. There are limitations, that bouncy ride, the rather cramped driving position, but they never stop being an absolute hoot to drive. Oh, this thing is nippy. Now we'll go around this cone. Oh wow. Oh. Oh. It's not hard to see why people love Minis. They are absolutely superb. Sadly they do rot. That is the biggest issue with them, but you can get brand new body shells. So rot isn't a reason for one to die. It just means the restoration costs might be a bit iffy, but yeah. Even at car park speeds, you can see what the fuss is all about with these cars. So that was the Mini Italian job. Minis are such huge fun. I need to do a proper full-blown road test on one. There's a Hillman Imp lurking in there. That is also available on this Drive Dad's Car scheme. And intriguing to try. I believe Steph of iDriver Classic is going to have a play with that one. But yeah, Minis, I just love them. I think they look gorgeous. They're an absolute riot to drive. So very glad that others will get their chance to come here and discover what the Mini is all about. I hope you've enjoyed that. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to head to drivedadscar.com if you wish to drive the Mini, and the Great British Car Journey, who actually host these events here at their museum in Derbyshire. Do go and check them out. Check out their car club as well, where you get a 40% discount on the drive experiences. So yeah, look forward to seeing you in a future video. Farewell.